Shalom WJC family. It's time for our weekly Torah Talk. And this week in synagogue we will be reading Parshat Lech Licha, where God comes and tells Avram, then living in a place called Ur Kasdim, although we'll question if that's really where he is at the beginning of our story, seems to indicate that he's in Ur Kasdim. That's at the end of actually Noach, when we first learn of Abraham's heritage. Tells us that he's in a place called Ur Kasdim. God comes and says, get out of there and go to the place where I will show you, which we know is the land of Canaan, which will, of course, become the land of Israel. So some questions. First of all, that phrase Lech Licha is very strange. It means like, you go. Of course, why say Lech Licha and not just Telech, go, or Lech? It's a very odd construction. Lots of commentary on that. And also, where does this come from? You know, the question is raised by commentators. It just starts out, Lech Licha. We never hear why Abraham is the person who deserves to hear that. And a lot of midrash, a lot of rabbinic commentary is taken up, asking what made Avram so special. For example, in the last parsha, in Parshat Noach, we're told that Noach was righteous in his generation and he walked with God. And then, so God, saves Noah and his family. Here we get no background information about why Abraham would be picked. So one commentator whose opinion I'd like to highlight today is called Rabbeinu Bachya. He brings a very broad set of perspectives in his commentary. And he brings the idea that the reason God says Lech Licha is that Abraham is in this place called Chaldea or Kasdim, and it's a dirty place. It's very ugly. Dirty not in the direct sense of, it's actually dirty, but the people there, they're idol worshippers, they're very evil, they're very bad. And Rabbeinu Bachya is going to tell us, actually, this is not even in Kasdim, that he's actually way farther away on the other side of the Euphrates River. Kasdim is closer to Canaan. And how does he derive that? He says Abraham is called Avram HaIvri, the Ivri. And one derivation of that, Ivrit, by the way, is now the word for Hebrew. So something like Avram of the Hebrews, but he says it's Over Hanahar, like on the other side of the river. So he originally comes from this place in Babylonia, the other side of the river, very nasty, nasty place. And God tells him, Lech Lecha, you got to get out of there and you've got to go to Canaan. Why? So Rabbeinu Bachya, in a very clever play on words, says it actually comes from lichluch, with the same letters as Lech Lecha. You can put it together, and it's lichluch, which means dirty. And basically, the people you are surrounding yourself with, they're not good people. And they're as good as you are, Avram, they're going to corrupt you. So you have to get out of there. Now, why does he say that it's all the way back in Babylonia and not in Chaldea, in Kasdim? He says earlier we learned that Abraham's in a place called Ur Kasdim. He says that's not actually a place, that Kasdim is the place, and he stops there on the way from Babylonia. That and how does he derive this? There's a whole complicated system. He says he would just be called Avram HaKasdim, Avram of the Chaldeans, if he was from there, not HaIvri, from the other side of the river. So Ur is in fact a city, but it's also a word. And he says, what's the Ur referred to? There's a famous midrash about a king in Kasdim, Nimrod, who basically throws Abraham into a fire, says trying to get him to commit idolatry, and Abraham refuses to, and therefore he comes through the fire unscathed, or unscathed. Or is a word for light. So the fire, the Ur of the Kasdim that he passes through is a reference to how good he was, right? So on his way, he already has resisted idolatry. And that's why, says Rabbeinu Bachya, that little note at the end of last week's Torah portion, Noach, is a hint at how good Abraham is, which is why God comes to him and says, Lech Lecha, get away from this lichluch, from this dirty place. However, think it's very important to recognize the place where God is sending him is Canaan, which we know is also a place where the people are not good. In fact, God's going to tell Abraham and his ancestors that they need to displace the Canaanite tribes, 7 tribes who are idolaters, who are unethical, immoral. And so what good is it to leave one dirty place where people are corrupt, and go to another dirty place where people are corrupted? How corrupt, by the way? Remember, this is where Sodom and Gomorrah are going to be. God's going to have to destroy a couple of these cities because they're so bad. Why would God take Abraham from Babylonia, where he was born, or if you want to believe other opinions, Kasdim, and bring him to Canaan? What's the difference? And one might argue that the difference is when it's the place he was born, it's more likely to corrupt him. But bringing his goodness and his righteousness to a new place would give him the opportunity to spread the word of the good things that having one God, the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, would bring into the world. So maybe it has to do with it being his birthplace. In fact, God says to him, when he says, go out of this place, he says, leave your land, your birthplace, and the house of your father. Maybe it's leaving the birthplace and the house of the father that's so important. But he doesn't bring him to an empty place. He brings him to Canaan. I think it's very important because it means that as much as we're not supposed to allow ourselves to be corrupted by our environs, and maybe even, like we say in Abraham's story, we have to leave some places if we think they are beyond salvation, or if we might get dirtied by going through the mud of that place. On the other hand, we're not supposed to go to a place that's totally pure, or just, let's say, empty, right? We go to a place where we may still encounter people who disagree with us, different kinds of people. Avram comes to Canaan because part of our job is to get a little dirty. Because part of being a light to the nations means that we have to go to dark places and spread the light. And I think this balance is important. We live in a time when it's very easy to never talk to anyone who disagrees with you. By the way, just because people disagree with us, it doesn't mean that they're corruptive or dirty or anything like that. So I want to stop the metaphor there, if you'll allow me. But we spend a lot of time in our silos and our echo chambers, only hearing the opinions that we agree with. And then we make up narratives about the other people, why they must believe what they believe. They're dirty, they're dumb, they're corrupt, they're whatever it is. And because of that, we not only don't we understand our environs and are able to challenge our own views, but also we are unable to help other people the way Avraham was able to help other people in Canaan. And so there's a balance here, and I wonder if the balance might not be off. Maybe it's time that we spend a little less time in what we consider to be clean places, talking to only the people who agree with us, whether that's our social media feeds or the kind of places we surround ourselves with, and maybe allow ourselves into these deeper conversations. And the only way we can do it is to be like Avram, to have a good grounding in who we are and our beliefs and our ideals. And I think that's what's so important about synagogue, about Jewish practice, right? Avram doesn't come, with nothing to Canaan. Once he leaves the place of his nativity and he comes to Canaan, he's now got the guidance of God. He's got the guidance of sort of a pre-Torah, and that is able to protect him even as he encounters the peoples in the land where he and his descendants, us, will eventually settle. This is, I know, been an intense week for a lot of people. I want to encourage some reflection that how do we keep our ideals whole by surrounding ourselves with a nurturing community that can help guide us in these endeavors, and also, make sure that we are out there learning from other people, trying to understand their perspectives, and ultimately engaging in constructive conversations that may enrich all sides. If we are able to do that, then maybe we too can come to feel more like we're living in a promised land, wherever it is we are living, that we will be able to achieve the promise of all those places. Shabbat Shalom.